it's Dogtor Izzy calling. Today's video is one that I, weirdly enough, had planned for a while. And what are we going to be talking about today? The most bizarre surgery that I ever took part in. For context, for anyone who's new here, my name is Izzy and I'm a vet surgeon, and I've been a vet surgeon for nearly 5 years. And we're going to be talking about the surgery that I've done personally that is probably the weirdest one. I don't know how I can really top this one in terms of weird stakes. And what was it? I enucleated a fish. Fish. For those of you who don't know, an enucleation is a surgery that is performed in order to remove an eye. So yes, if this is something that's going to bother you, look away. This is not the video for you if you're squeamish with eyes. There is going to be surgical videos of the eye being removed. There are going to be pictures of the eye both being removed and once it has been removed from the eye. And also a fish with a whole empty socket situation. So if this is going to bother you, this probably isn't the video for you, my guy. I would go and watch someone else. But for the rest of you who are curious, hi, hello, welcome to the We Aren't Too Squeamish Anymore Club. So let's have some backstory to this surgery, how it came about and what it was. So for a start, this fish was my fish. He was a goldfish and his name was Alistair, named after Alistair from Dragon Age because obviously your girl's got a problem. I had two fish named Kavanna and Alistair. Kavanna was my OC, or my own personal warden, and then Alistair was obviously love interest, so, you know, made sense that they were Kavanna and Alistair. So I had this goldfish Alistair. He was maybe a couple of years old, maybe about 5 years old, something like that. Which you may be thinking, oh, that's old for a goldfish. No, unfortunately not. We've been quite lulled into a sense of false knowledge with goldfish and how long they're supposed to live for. Because did you know they can live for 20 plus years sometimes? Did you know that the oldest known living goldfish is 43 years old? I say is, like it's still alive. I don't know if it's still alive, but 43 is the oldest fish. But quite often we take such bad care of goldfish and, you know, fish in general, that they live life expectancies way under what they're supposed to. We just neglect them, we don't give them enough of the right food, we don't filter them properly, we don't look after the water properly, they have tanks that are too small, so goldfish tend to have a bad habit of dying early. But I knew Alistair had a little bit of time left in him, but he had a problem, a big problem. He had a tumour on his eye. It's not good. Fish sometimes can randomly develop tumours, which is another word for cancerous masses, or neoplasias is the proper word for it. He had a neoplastic growth on his right eye, and I kept seeing it and monitoring it, and I realised that it was starting to grow exponentially. So what started as a teeny tiny lump stayed fairly teeny tiny, then it got more and more, and then suddenly, boom, it was getting a lot bigger, a lot faster, and I was starting to panic. I realised very quickly that he wasn't able to use that eye anymore because it couldn't even move, and I was like, he's probably not got a whole lot of vision left in that thing anymore. And the tumour on the top that was sticking out, it's like an iceberg. There's gonna be a whole lot more underneath. So it dawned on me, either this fish was going to die from cancer because inevitably this is going to spread and go quite quickly, or we could try surgically removing the eye.
What did he say?
So I felt kind of bad just leaving Alistair to his fate and just letting him die from cancer, and it was like, either I euthanize him before he starts getting painful, or I try the surgery. And I was like, when in Rome and your back's against the wall, might as well remove an eye from a fish.
YOLO!
Now, I worked in a practice where there were currently 3 operating vets, including me. There was another vet who was a couple of years more, graduated me, and then a very senior vet who didn't really like operating very much. She was primarily a console vet. Nothing wrong with that. Some vets have their preferences. I'm a preference of emergency medicine and surgery, quite frankly. I do not really care for day work anymore. It's not really my thing anymore. But the other vet, who wasn't the senior vet, also did not fancy doing a fish surgery. But anyway, this left me with basically 2 choices. 1, refer the fish to an exotics vet and pay through the nose with no staff discount for a fish, or have a go at the surgery myself. So after I realised I was going to have to do this, I realised, how does one operate on a goldfish? Funnily enough, Google didn't have a whole lot of answers, and neither did the surgical textbook, so I was going, oh.
Alrighty then.
Thank God though, there was one article that actually gave a little bit of a guide, a bit of a cheat code to doing fish surgery, because like, how do you anaesthetize a fish? So the day dawned when it was time for the surgery, and Alistair was placed in his obligatory transport Tupperware box because that's pretty much the only way I've learned how to transport fish, because I ain't putting him in a bag. So here's the list of equipment that was required of this surgery. So we need 3 tubs of water, we need a wide bore IV catheter, I recommend a green, some 2.5mm syringes, 2 or 3 is fine, a Doppler ultrasound probe, the one used for blood pressure, is also totally fine, as small as you can, some local anaesthetic, I personally used Marcaine, but you can use lidocaine, it's absolutely fine, some rat tooth smooth forceps, like if you can get small ones, the little thumb forceps are good. A scalpel blade, probably attach it to a handle, make your life easier. And your phone, because you know you are going to want to film this to put it on the obligatory practice Facebook page, obviously. And a tea towel soaked in water. All of this, as you can probably guess, involves a vast quantity of creativity. And by creativity, I mean there is nothing that fits a fish, make it up as you go along, fam. So what is the wide bore catheter for, you may ask? It is in fact a makeshift ET tube. An ET tube is, for background, an endotracheal tube, which basically means a tube that goes inside the trachea. Another lesson with Izzy for the day. Endo versus exo. So endo is anything internal or inside, and exo is anything outside. So if you have an exothermic reaction, it's one that produces heat, and an endothermic one takes heat in. So endotracheal, tube inside the trachea. But if you weren't fully aware on fish anatomy, which I don't expect you to be, fish breathe using their gills, which are found on the side of their head. They have a heart that is found roughly in their throat, and the heart pumps the blood one direction around the body, so through the gills, rest of the body, and back. Unlike mammals, where the heart will pump to the lungs to collect oxygen, back to the heart, and then back to the rest of the body, it's a little bit different for fish. It's a little bit simpler. But we also need to make sure that he is having water go over these gills, or he's not going to be able to breathe. So the wide bore catheter is an endotracheal tube. Go in the mouth, push water through, goes over the gills, provides oxygenation. Honestly, kind of brilliant, and I can't take credit for that idea, I'm afraid it's not mine. Now as for the fun bit, the drugs part, this is how we can make the magic happen. So we're going to be using an anesthetic agent called alfaxalone. Alfaxan is a trade name for it. It's basically an induction agent. A really common induction agent that's used normally is a white substance called propofol. If anyone's ever had a fracture in their arm or their leg that needs reducing or moving back into place, you may have been given propofol for like a short-term anesthesia. It basically just induces anesthetic, but it doesn't maintain it, and it wears off after about 20 minutes or so. Alfaxan is another type of this one. It tends to be a little bit gentler, and it's, you know, you have to use a lot more of it than you do for propofol, but it is good for cases. And in the case of fish, perfect. It's clear, sits in water. This is how you do it. You're gonna have 3 tubs of water. We're gonna label them tub A, tub B, tub C. And each tub contains a different concentration of this anesthetic agent. So we have tub A, which is our induction tub. This one contains 10 milligram per liter of alfaxan, which is the concentration of the milligrammage per liter of water. That is enough to induce anesthetic in the fish. And then we have tub B, which is our maintenance tank. This is maintained at 5 milligrams per liter of alfaxan. And this one is the water that we're going to use to keep the anesthetic under but not send him further under. The trouble with anesthetics is if you send something too far under, you won't get them back out again. So obviously we don't want to send him too far down that particular path, so we have the maintenance tub at the 5 milligram. And then finally we have tub C, which is the recovery tank. It's just water, just tank water.
Pure water.
It's worth noting as well that all these waters was all water from his own tank as well, so it was not, you know, alien water to him. It was nice and comfortable. It's the equivalent of going into hospital and having your own pajamas, basically, rather than having the horrible butt flap of a hospital gown, you know? So first step is you put them inside tub A and you just basically wait. You've got to take a bit of time. It took Alistair about, I think, 15 minutes to go under. So you'll start to see them sort of rock from side to side. They'll still be trying to swim, but they start rocking, and eventually they'll start going sideways, 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 and eventually we'll just sit sideways. And one good way to check and see if they're actually fully under anesthetic is to pinch their tail. So where you've got the sort of the tail like this, the 2 forks, you pinch there, and if there's no response and no wiggling, your fish is anesthetized. It's kind of an equivalent response as a palpebral response in regular anesthetics. That basically involves tapping the inner corner of an eye, and most animals will blink when you touch that. If they're under anesthetic, won't happen. So once this is all okay and he's under anesthetic, we then took him out from the tank, and I injected locally around the eye the local anesthetic. This removes sensation to the eye itself and the tissue around it, and means that we can actually continue the operation without putting him too far under anesthetic. Local anesthesia is fantastic like that. Combining it with general anesthesia means you don't have to put someone so deep under anesthetic, and therefore make it safer. So then after that we popped him back into the induction tank because he was a little bit waking up after that, but then once he was, you know, back to being no tail pinch, no response, we took him out, we put him onto the wet tea towel. We had 2 nurses on hand, well, technically 3, 1 filming, and 2 other nurses on hand. One of them was in charge of putting water through the wide bore catheter to keep him oxygenated, and the other was holding the Doppler probe to his throat to hear his heart, to make sure he was still alive. And you can hear it quite loudly actually in the video. They also at the same time were dribbling water from the maintenance tank over him to keep him moist, because you do not want him drying out, the scales will get very damaged, and also allows the continuation of the maintenance of this anesthesia. So I took him out, we got going, I used my ratties to pick at the eye, tried to go for the first incision, and he wiggled! Oh my god, he wiggled. Not ideal. Obviously he wasn't deep enough, so we had to put him back in tank A. These things happen. He was letting us on that he was, you know, absolutely fine. I put some more local in his eye when I took him back out the second time, tried again. Once again, it seemed to be going okay, and then suddenly he wriggled. I was like, am I doing this wrong? This isn't gonna work. Popped him back in the tank, left him for a bit longer, took him out, and finally, third time's a charm, and we got away with it. So the water that's being pushed in through the ET tube is the maintenance tank water, and the maintenance tank water is what is being dribbled over him, so tank B. So finally, we got him there on the table. It was very small, very fiddly. Probably the weirdest thing that was a challenge, and as you can see, I end up using my hand to hold the fish still while incising around the eye with the scalpel, is he's so light and so small that every time I lift something up, the whole fish lifts with him. Normal patients, you know, anything that's like a kilo or more, which is everything you normally operate on, you can sort of lift things up like a mass or a small thing you're removing. Body stays still, you lift it up, skin tight, can slice better. Not the case here, it just wasn't possible. So I had to kind of pin him down a little bit, or ask one of the nurses to kind of pin him down gently so he didn't lift into the air and float away. But eventually, after a little bit of persistence, cutting around it, gently, really gently, fine, gentle, tiny little scratching strokes around. Don't make a big slice or you risk damaging the socket. Eventually, after painstaking amount of time, the eye came out, and the minute that eye was out, into the recovery tank immediately. And then once in the recovery tank, obviously he looks kind of alarmingly dead for about 5 minutes. We were advised in this article online to rock him back and forward a little bit in the water, so holding him and just sort of swishing him gently. Again, this can help with water going through the gills, and because it's clear water, just empty water with no induction agent in it, hopefully it'll wash out any of the alfaxin lingering in his gills. We also used a regular 2.5mm syringe to push some water, just regular water, through the gills again, really gently, just to kind of rinse it out a little bit so that there wasn't any kind of remnants in there. And then eventually we started seeing a little bit of mouth movement, a little bit of tail wiggling, and all in round he slowly started to come round. And then half an hour later, this fish with a cavern for an eye socket was swimming around like nothing was happening. I bought in some fish food for him, gave him some food, started eating, and that was pretty much it. Pain relief wise for the fish, the local anesthetic is kind of all you can do. Unfortunately, there isn't really any pain relief you can continue to give to a fish after that, especially if it's sharing tank mates. He did go back home to an isolation tank for a couple of days just to recover and get over things. Again, I just took tank water from his and just topped up both. So yes, that was it. That was how I operated on a fish. A lot of people asked me about that one. The worst part of it was actually the first ever enucleation of my entire career. Everyone else, they'll do a dog or a cat, maybe a rabbit. No, I said, I have got to be different somehow, fish. And then ironically, the next one I did was a rat. So all was going well with his post-op recovery in his isolation tank. For the record, his isolation tank was just another big Tupperware. But I didn't have the space or the money for a whole nother fish tank, especially not for 2 days. It just wasn't feasible. So I just used a large Tupperware tank, and he was only going to be in it for a couple of days. I thought this would be simple. Easy, no problem. Surely. No. Wrong. Silly me.
Ha! Wrong!
So he was on the windowsill with the other tank next to him so they could kind of see each other and keep doing that kind of thing. I go upstairs on day 2, go to bed and think nothing more of it. I come downstairs the next day and go, why do the cats look guilty? For backstory, for those of you who don't know, I have 3 gorgeous cats called Merlin, Arthur and Lancelot, and at the time I just had Merlin and Arthur, who are the silver and the white one. They were still quite young at this point in time. Still kittens, still dumb as hell. Turkish Angoras, they like to climb on a lot of things. Obviously, some point during the night, one of them had climbed onto the windowsill. Both of them liked climbing on top of the fish tank and staring at it. But yeah, they knocked the Tupperware off the windowsill. Thank God. I don't know what miracle occurred. It didn't split open. I did, thank God, have the forthright to duct tape this Tupperware shut because I knew there could potentially be a problem like this. And it would have been fine if it had landed maybe upside down or on its base or something like that. But no, it landed on its side! So of course, Tupperwares, even with duct taping, are not watertight. So overnight, obviously the water had started to drain out. I came down and I was greeted by a Tupperware box filled with maybe but 2 cups of water left in it and a very wet carpet and a very smug pair of cats going, look what we did, Mummy, we made a mess. I've never panicked quite like that before. I had to get poor Alistair out and just put him straight back into the main tank because I didn't have enough time to fill up another Tupperware with the tank water, acclimatise it, nothing. I just had to yeet back into the water. Me thinking, oh god, the other fish is going to eat him. This is going to be a disaster. Thank god though, we got lucky. And yeah, the other fish was more happy than anything to see him back, I think. And he did incredibly well. Man survived without an eye for another 1.5 years, but unfortunately I started noticing after that 1.5 years we were starting to develop masses elsewhere on his body, and it was obvious that the cancer had come back and spread somewhere else. And it was at that stage I was going to euthanize him. He died before I could actually do it, so he must have been hiding that one for a while. I still feel a bit bad about that, but anyway, R.I.P. Alistair, you were a very good learning experience for me. And that, my friends, is the story of how I surgically removed my fish's eye. If veterinary professionals are watching this, A, hi, hello, and B, I hope this is useful, genuinely. I would have killed for a video like this when I did the surgery, so I hope it helps at least one person. But for now, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up for this one because I have done a night shift, I am tired, and I'm going to go to bed. So thank you ever so much for watching this video. I hope you found it entertaining, enjoyable. If you fancy following any of my other stuff, then all my socials are linked below in my link tree. I've got Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, but I wish you all a very good day. I hope you've had a good one, enjoyed your time with me, and I hope you continue to have a good time for the rest of the day. Over and out. This is Dogtor Izzy, signing off. Bye-bye! A massive thank you to all of my Patreon supporters who are listed here on the screen. This video would not be possible without the support of you guys, so I can never say thank you enough. If you are interested in supporting the channel, then please check the link below for my Patreon where you can subscribe and get a whole bunch of bonus extra content. Thank you again!